Welcome to PRAJNA SPARKS, a podcast where we listen to a Dharma talk, contemplate with our minds and in our hearts, and engage in guided meditation. In this episode, we explore Virya Paramita, often translated as the transcendent perfection of diligence, fourth of a 6-part series exploring the 6 Mahayana Paramitas. Every episode of PRAJNA Sparks takes hours to plan, record, and edit. You know what I'm going to say. Can't you give us a little bit of time today to subscribe, review, like, or share our podcasts with someone who might be interested? Alongside your own practice, this is the best possible offering, as it helps the Dharma reach new listeners. Okay, let's face it, diligence is nobody's favorite word in the English language. It's not so much that we are lazy per se. We might actually be diligent, but it's not up there in words that people love to pull out of a hat to make others feel warm, cozy, and fuzzy inside. There's a sense of maybe judgment that looms over this word diligence, or maybe a sense of somebody's watching you and you're not measuring up, or maybe a sense of our own perfectionism that hounds us to some impossible standard. So why in the world would somebody like me, who loves to change words around, not change the translation of Virya Paramita from the Sanskrit into something other than the transcendent perfection of diligence? I'm so glad you asked. First of all, sometimes these words that get under our skin can actually be helpful in uncovering spots that we don't like to go to, places of discomfort where we could actually use some exploration. I also like to recover words in their fuller, richer meaning in the context of Dharma so that we don't have to hold our noses every time we hear the words such as diligence or renunciation or other words that are not on the top 10 list of words we love to hear. With diligence, we can start reconfiguring how we connect with it. In other words, we can engage in the practice of wording the Dharma to come to understand what is meant by this term. So let's look at the term Virya in Sanskrit, almost identical in Pali. These words have a shared ancestor with words that we find in the English language, such as virile or virago. You'll notice that these words are also not particularly warm and fuzzy. Virago in particular, which is associated with a female person, is almost always pejorative. The sense of a woman that is brash and in your face. This is the part that I want to recover. That sense of virya is really referring to something heroic, active, powerful, and yes, intense. We see that same word in Sanskrit in the Vajrayana figures of the Viras and Virinis, heroic figures, bristling with energy, power, and activity. We can think of it also in modern day parlance as that yang energy that counterbalances yin. So when we're speaking of virya, what we're speaking of is a very active, solid, heroic, energetic vim and vigor. In other words, an energy that is focused, powerful, and beyond the pale of our normal everyday experience. In our lineage of the Karma Kagyu in Tibetan Buddhism, we most often call up the definition of the Bodhisattva Shantideva from his text, The Way of the Bodhisattva, delighting in virtue. Ooh, now we're getting somewhere a little more interesting. Virya is something that is grounded in delight. Diligence, to be diligence, must grow from delight. That's quite different than what we think of usually. Diligence as something that we're being forced to do or that we are forcing ourselves to do. Diligence here is really a lot more like enthusiasm, literally something that inspires us to act. An inspired action that is also focused, heroic in scope, and consistent. There is certainly a sense of effort there, of activity. And in fact, Virya Paramita has very strong connections to one of the branches of the Buddha's Eightfold Noble Path, namely right effort. When I speak and write about right efforts, I like to consider it from the inside out. Like so much of Buddhist principles and practice, these are all pointing to an attitude that blossoms from within and it begins to move outwards, affecting the penumbra of our experience so that it starts to show in our actions, our speech, our thoughts, and even becomes a way of being in the world. When we look at right effort, which is one way to understand diligence, it's about cultivating what is wholesome and discouraging what is not wholesome. What does wholesome mean? It means what's healthy, what's good for us, what feels right and supportive for mind's natural qualities of tranquility, compassion, loving kindness, wisdom, and so forth. All of the energies and actions of body, speech, and mind that align with these natural qualities of mind, the qualities inherent in our Buddha nature, are wholesome. How do we know? You can experiment for yourself. Try and engage in these activities that the Buddha describes as aligned with loving kindness, compassion, wisdom, and so forth. It feels like we are recovering wholeness in our heart, mind, in our lives, in our relationships with others. So in many ways, right effort is a purposeful, intentional investment of energy to notice where our habits tend towards the unwholesome and discourage those, while we also notice where our habits tend towards the wholesome and encourage those. This is one way of understanding the kind of effort that's involved with Virya. It's an effort that is grounded in the delight that comes from living in wholeness with our true nature, the delight that comes from not clashing with the nature of our mind. We know that delight. It's not some odd thing that somebody's made up or something that you can't experience for yourself. You know that sense of taking delight in what we're doing. Sometimes we call that flow or being in the zone. And we can experience that with art, with writing, with sports, with running, with physical activity. And there isn't a reason in the world why that shouldn't also apply to spiritual practice. As a matter of fact, it applies all the more to spiritual practice. These are ways that not only our body, not only our speech, not only our mind, but our body, our speech, and our mind can be in unity, in the wholeness and the fullness of our true nature. That is delight, being in the zone of Buddha nature. It's flowing with the mind's natural inherent qualities that are innumerable, all aimed at optimizing the benefit of ourselves and others. More specifically, what is diligence actually doing? What happens when we're grounded in delight in our spiritual practice, in that flow, in that zone, investing our energy in a way that is joyful? We become naturally absorbed. We enjoy what we're doing, and that naturally counteracts any habits we might have of what's technically called laziness, not making the most of our time. That could be because we're being idle, spending more of our time than we would like in things that numb us out rather than fill us with delight and joy. Then there's also a quality of laziness that's about underestimating ourselves. I can't do this practice. I'll never reach Buddhahood. Those bodhisattvas, they must be very special. I'm just a lowly person. I can't do that. Those folks who became arhats, they must have had something unusual about them. I'll never make it. I'm not even going to try. It's in Tibetan called having sheep's knees. I guess sheep's knees are knobbly and shaky. And it's that sense of being weak-willed, underestimating ourselves, not believing in ourselves. Then there's another kind of laziness that's called the laziness of being busy with misguided priorities. That is about where do we invest our time. This actually looks like being very diligent in a worldly sense. Busy with misguided priorities in a Dharma context might be spending a lot of time making money to the exclusion of your spiritual practice, or any other kinds of worldly activities, garnering many Instagram followers, hours spent making TikTok videos, all these things so that people know who we are, so that we become famous in this tiny little bubble that we live in. From a Dharma perspective, this is lazy. Why? Because it makes us so busy in ways that prioritize worldly things that we have little to no time left for our spiritual practice. What diligence is looking at is where do we allow our energy to cultivate delight? Do we take delight in entertainment, in fame, or do we take delight in the relationships that we make with others, bringing a Dharma perspective to them so that we can connect with the people around us and our family, our work situations, our neighborhoods, our communities, and so forth, with that open heart of compassion, loving kindness, solidarity, wisdom, and not only that, also engage in spiritual practices that continue to expand our ability to manifest these qualities to infinite measure. Finally, another way to understand diligence, Virya Paramita, is how it develops. First, from the attitude. This is called armor-like diligence. There's a protective quality, that sense of seeing ourselves in a different perspective, fully embracing our inner bodhisattva and orienting our attitude to move in the direction that bodhisattva to be wants to traverse. From there, that attitude affects our actions, our deeds of body, speech, and mind. This is applied diligence, where we're actually working on discouraging any unwholesome or afflictive mind states, speech, and physical acts, encouraging wholesome, virtuous mind states, speech, and physical acts, and also learning how we can do the best we're able to benefit others. It's fine for it not to be every single being right now. We start where we are with that intention, that armor-like diligence of ultimately extending that out to all beings, manifesting that bodhisattva in a not-so-inner way. And then finally, diligence becomes insatiable diligence. That delight feeds on itself. It becomes an energetic zeal that is beautiful to behold and inspiring to others as well. The way we are in the world, the way we extend our energy to everyone around us, and the way we revel in our own glorious Buddha nature. When you hear the word diligence, I hope you'll be able to think of it in this glorious, delightful, powerful way.
Turning to the contemplation on diligence, Virya, Sundru in Tibetan, we can recollect just how crucial this contemplation piece is with whatever Dharma we're engaging in. In our current context, this aspect of contemplation is helping us build an intimate personal relationship with the paramitas, helping us integrate it into our life, into our activities, into the way we think and go about our days. The contemplation portion is the portion of our practice where we dig in to how we feel, shining light on those aspects of our thoughts, our attitudes towards the particular Dharma topic, in this case, diligence, that we might not consciously go to. So in many ways, it's a slowing down, even at the same time that it's really bringing our own life experience, our own biases, our own proclivities, what have you, into conversation with the Dharma. As we look at Sundru, at diligence, it's so vital that we slow down throughout our day and start to relate to diligence in the way the Dharma describes it, as taking delight in virtue. As we contemplate, compare our own experience, our own way of thinking about diligence with this radical notion that diligence is actually fundamentally genuine delight in virtue, then this may help us reorient our whole mindset towards the path, towards just what it is that we're working towards. Working with diligence is a gradual, organic process. We can come to genuinely appreciate and thrill in virtue as we slow down and open up to the subtle, quiet changes that practicing the Dharma exerts on our mind, on our thoughts, on our hearts. I encourage you, as you go about your day, to let these questions percolate in your mind, to hold in your thoughts space to examine your actions, your thoughts, especially in today's culture and society where we're so driven to succeed, so driven to exert maximum effort, almost as a transactional way of living. It can be so powerful to slow down and to see where that effort that we're putting in is coming from. What's the basis? Some of the contemplations that we can use to launch our own investigation of diligence, to establish this personal, intimate relationship with the paramita, the transcendent perfection of diligence, is to begin simply with the word diligence. What comes up for me when I think of diligence? Allow yourself to get nuanced. Feel into your feelings as you hear that word diligence. How does my feeling change when I translate diligence into taking delight in virtue? Does that change things for me? Does that shift anything? When we start to think of diligence as an effort that is grounded in delight, we've all had experiences like that throughout our life, where something requires effort, but at the same time, it's a joy because we find the doing of it delightful as well as the result of it. We can also examine diligence from the perspective of what we're orienting ourselves towards. How am I using my energy? Am I reaping the rewards that energy expenditure is aimed at? So often with diligence, in the Buddhist context, it's this gradual building process where at first we have to fake it a little bit. We have to push ourselves. And yet, over time, we start to appreciate more and more the subtle delights of virtue, how good it feels to engage in virtue, as well as starting to recognize those results in our present life that have come from previous practice of virtue. These are a few of the ways that we can start off our contemplation on diligence. I hope that you will take them to heart, take whatever is useful in them, examine it for yourselves, and see how that opens up this exploration of the transcendent perfection of diligence.
This is Yeshe and Zopa for PRAJNA Sparks. Be sure to join us every month on the new and full moons for fresh episodes. Stay tuned now for a guided meditation with Lama Zopa. Shivnee is our Tibetan singing bowl artist. Thank you so much for your generosity of time, giving us a bit of your day to like, subscribe, share, and review PRAJNA SPARKS. It really does help us to spread the gift of Dharma to new listeners. If you have any questions, contact us via email, Instagram, or Facebook. Check the episode notes for those links and for more resources on today's topic. Visit us on the web at prajnafire.com or follow us on Instagram and Facebook at PRAJNA SPARKS. Thank you for listening. May all beings benefit.
Begin our meditation practice on diligence. Let's start as we usually do, taking a moment to arrive, to ground into this space, this present moment, this wondrous quality of being alive, where we welcome whatever is going on, even at the same time that we don't hold tightly to our experience as being me or mine. Just allow the experience of being present, whatever thoughts, emotions, feelings, busyness that may be popping up in mind. Recognize it, even at the same time that we neither push it away nor grasp tightly to it. And just come into this present moment. Now that we've grounded and arrived, let's take a minute or two to settle in tranquility meditation, in shamatha, where we are honing in on one-pointed concentration, allowing ourselves to settle into that calm, clear lucidity of mind that's neither too tight nor too loose, but remains easeful, focused on our meditation object, whether that be the breath, a stone, an imagined image, what have you. Let's practice like that for 1 or 2 minutes. In that settled state of mind now, let's turn to the meditative inquiry. A quick reminder again on meditative inquiry. It consists both of experiential analysis and resting meditation, where the experiential analysis is examining in a one-pointed way the topic, in this case, diligence, not getting distracted or falling off into dullness, bringing our attention back anytime we see those hindrances to meditation come up. And as we do the experiential analysis, whenever there's clarity, insight, an aha moment, we drop the analysis and rest one-pointedly in that clarity until it naturally fades, and then we return back to the experiential analysis. For this meditation on diligence, it really comes down to what is meaningful. Diligence, this taking delight in virtue, is primarily an antidote to wasting time. And the texts identify 3 primary ways that we waste time: as idleness, wasting time as lacking confidence or underestimating our potential, and wasting time in all the busyness and gathering, accumulation of material goods, trying to find happiness in the external world. To what end? How well is that working for us? As we engage in this experiential analysis, first we're turning our attention towards part of the problem, the wasting time. Examine for yourself how much time is wasted through attachment to idleness, towards just letting time go by, making time pass. How much time do we waste where we think, oh, I could never attain Buddhahood. I'm not that kind of person. I'm just not good enough. Buddhahood is amazing. There's no way I can get there. That subtle, niggling doubt, or perhaps it's an obvious doubt, is needless. Buddha nature is our potential. And yet it's so easy to give in to those self-critical voices and try to get away from the pain that they create for us. And there's wasting time as we engage in negativity, as we engage in many of the things that society thinks is worthwhile. So as we can see, diligence in the Buddhist context is shot through with an active awareness of impermanence and of the four thoughts that turn the mind to Dharma, because it's focusing clearly on what is meaningful. So take a minute now to examine your own relationship to wasting time, to the ways that you engage in that. Try and unearth just what it is that's going on there for you, underneath all the strategies and attachments and aversions we have. Recognizing that wasting time is inevitably bringing us closer and closer to our death and what comes after it, and how crucial it is to attain something meaningful, given this precious opportunity of this life, this moment. Now let's look at the flip side of this, the diligence that is the antidote to wasting time. Diligence, taking delight in virtue, comes down to fine-tuning our outlook such that we are naturally invested in genuine well-being and its causes. The teachings in our lineage describe three aspects of diligence: armor-like diligence, applied diligence, and insatiable diligence. Look at these in experiential analysis one by one. The protective diligence, or armor-like diligence, is primarily that of the attitude, which is orienting towards what is worthwhile, fully embracing the magnitude of what the Bodhisattva path entails. As Gampopa, one of the great Tibetan forebearers of our lineage, says, "From this moment onwards, and until every sentient being has been established in highest enlightenment, I will never lay aside diligence and virtue." Explore what engaging with this attitude is like, emphasizing that crucial pivot point of recognizing diligence to be delight in virtue, as opposed to a struggle or a hardship. How can I engender this diligence in myself, gradually cultivate it? Is that something that I even find worthwhile? Explore this experientially. Next, we can turn towards the second aspect of diligence, applied diligence. If armor-like diligence is the attitude, the mental framework, applied diligence is the actions that we undertake. And it's boiled down very simply to diligence in getting rid of affliction, diligence in accomplishing virtue, and diligence in working for the welfare of others. To explore these in experiential analysis, allow yourself to investigate your own feelings, your own attitude, how much it makes sense to you to get rid of afflictions, to accomplish virtue, to work for the welfare of others. This will point you towards just what it is you need to do or clarify for yourself along the path. And finally, insatiable diligence. If the first two are the attitude and the activity of diligence, insatiable diligence is primarily addressing the commitment of diligence. No matter how much virtue we accomplish, until we reach the state of enlightenment, we never think that's enough. I can just rest on my laurels now. Instead, we rejoice in what we've done. We feel the joy of accomplishing virtue. And at the same time, we recognize the path is not done. There's more to do for the benefit of all beings. Explore this experientially. Working in this way, we can gradually cultivate diligence in a way that is organic and natural to us, where the delight in virtue shines brighter and brighter through our own experience. Thank you for all that you do. Please take a moment now to share whatever goodness has come through the listening, contemplating, and meditating that we have done with ourselves and all beings, so that we may all delight in virtue and traverse the path towards its utmost perfection of Buddhahood, realizing the true nature of our minds.